The music that you're listening to right now is from the epilogue of this game. It's one of the best tracks in the game's soundtrack, and the game's soundtrack is very good. I am Seraphim17, this is my walkthrough for The Last Guardian. I was really surprised when this game didn't use Kao Atani. I don't know how to pronounce this gentleman's name, but he's one of my favourite music composers ever. He's done soundtracks to a lot of the things I hold very dear, and one of them was Shadow of the Colossus. So you've heard his music if you're familiar with this title and with this game series. And I was really hoping it was going to be in this, and I can't help but feeling like if he'd done this, if he'd scored the game, that it would have maybe resonated more with me. But it has to be said that the music that is here is sparsely used, but when it does arise, it's very good. It's very needed, and I think it definitely accentuates the point that they're trying to make with the game in a lot of areas. But the epilogue, much like in Shadow, is arguably the highlight of the entire suite of music. It's a beautiful building piece that just listen to it, guys. The Last Guardian epilogue, it's a wonderful track. It's not very long. It's just something else, it really is. Same with Shadow, if you wanted to go and check that one out. Shadow arguably is better, but that's just because, as I've mentioned, I'm a big fan of that composer. He's a genius, I think. People who are able to take rhythms and music from their head and then compose it and create it in the real world that is a skill that I don't think we value enough, because I think music is very important to life and to the enjoyment of life. Yeah, we'd rather pay people to steal from us and tell us one thing and do the opposite when it comes to politics and everything else, which is a wonderful, worser aspect of our nature, I guess. These gilded liars with silver tongues, what a wonderful time to be alive, as we run on the incredibly low frame rate sequence right here, as Trico saves us. This is the sequence where the guy in the stream was saying that this is intentionally slowed down for cinematic effect, and it is, but it's also incredibly low frame rate because it can't quite achieve what it's wanting to do. But we're back in control, and we're once in one of these vast vistas. That's a cool moment. I love when Trico helps you up, just like that. It's a shame it takes the boy like 40 seconds to recover after that, or, this might be a streamlined feeling game. But look at just this canyon here, bathed in mist or fog. I found out the other day the only difference between mist and fog is the distance that it obscures. I originally thought that one of them was what clung to the ground, and the other one was that obscured the sky. And I was wrong. I googled it. So there you go, guys. The only difference between the two is how far it impairs your vision, and how dense it is. But Trico's doing his job here. He's ferrying us the right place, which is always nice to see. So we're going to once again enter the world of irreverent comedy. I say comedy. I'm not Darkside Phil. I'm not dropping my new mixtape here. I meant to say commentary. If you find it funny, that's awesome. But it's not my intention. So we're going to talk about some random things. If this is the first video of mine you're ever watching, this is something that I do a lot. It's not to everybody's tastes, but it's to mine. And there is something inherently selfish about making a YouTube channel and putting up videos. Are these videos intended to help people get through The Last Guardian? Definitely. But I do believe that this isn't a game that a lot of people are going to struggle enough with to warrant a kind of intensive walkthrough that I can make. A lot of my most popular projects are indeed projects where the game is often gruelingly difficult, and I've perhaps done some kind of restriction to make it even worse, and I'm showing you the worst case scenario you can get yourself into, and then helping you get past it. Because if I can get through it with the worst of restrictions, hopefully you can do the same with a couple extra additives. But as you move down here, Trico is once again going to be your salvation as we fight against a couple of these enemies. The only one to fear here is the one with the shield, and you want to charge into him and make him drop it if you can. But there are occasional interesting moments where the detection on the roll is not the best, and it will not make him drop it, and it's kind of like the backstab thing from Demon Souls, if you remember that game. Backstabbing in Demon Souls is a finicky thing, but it can be done. It's just a little bit more precise than it was in the games that followed, and there were times when you get behind people and it wouldn't trigger, whereas in Dark Souls it would have done so. It's kind of like that here, where to make them drop it and have the designated response that you want, you have to line yourself up with their back quite pedantically. It wants you to do it in a very particular way. And if you're any way off that, what the game expects, it'll give you an animation you perhaps don't need. And here's me removing the dude's helmet. And then I'm trying to throw the helmet before I get grabbed. And I throw it at that fella. It'd be nice if the helmet would destroy them like it does the windows. I think that would have been a cool way to add to the combat. Take the helmet off a dude, chuck it at his friend, and it just damages his friend. It could have been super interesting. And I say super interesting in the most banal way. It would have still been shit. Let's be honest here, guys. You're not playing The Last Guardian for the combat. This is not a game for that. This is a game for an experience unlike any other you'll find. This is Trico once again going crazy, so this is another instance where if you want to calm him down, this is where they advocate petting. I'll be curious if I do it as well, I'm going to pet him. So if you watch, he's still kind of nuts, but it should bring him back to his senses. There he goes. He's come back to normal. And the puzzle here is quite interesting. It's one of my least favourite in the game, because it's another instance of Trico has to do something very specific that he's never done up to this point, to do something that you don't know you have to do. And it involves, there's a little transition there because I actually quit this session, and it loaded me in a different area, which is always fun. But essentially, you have to make Trico turn like a cog at the top of that wooden structure there next to the cells. And when he does this, it will raise the bars and open up an area so you can get that trampoline thing and jump up to the roof. But the problem here is I'm removing a spear. You know, sometimes I'm a nice guy. Said I wasn't going to waste too much time doing this, but every so often I do. And you'll notice here, Trico did it of his own volition. Did you see that? I kind of commanded him that way, and he just opened the cells. And you're watching this thinking, well, yeah, Chris, that's what you meant to do, right? Exactly. But I have experiences of like 10 minutes of him not doing it. At all. Doing everything but, like, tapping it and messing about with it and not doing it correctly. And making me wonder if I'm doing it wrong. And when you're doing something for that measure of time, and it's not working as intended, you just kind of wonder what the fuck is going on. And then you stop for the day because you're pissed off at the game, and then you come back the day after, you tell Trico to go to it, and he does it wonderfully. That's my problem with The Last Guardian right there. It's not the fact that Trico has, you know, this variability to him, because I think it can add a kind of charm in a frustrating way, but it's the fact that when you issue a command and you know exactly what you need, the game should interpret that. Like, if you point at the exact spot where something needs to happen, the game should be like, he obviously knows where to go, he's obviously figured it out, boom, do it. It shouldn't be the whole, like, will he do it, won't he do it argument. It should not exist. And it does exist, it exists a lot. And people are defending this as part of the core design, making it some kind of feature, turning it into something that we should think about differently. And I'm sorry, game not working right is just game not working right. It's not, you are not, you know, cognizant enough to understand the grand workings of the masterpiece. That's not what this is. This is just a simple bunch of code behind the scenes of programming that's meant to make the animal do something, but because there's all these varying other things it can do, it's getting lost in the shuffle. I don't think it's a feature, guys. You can't call this fucking Emily in Dishonored 2 and call it a brand new feature. You know, when Gears got women finally and everyone was like, oh, this is a feature. It's like, no, it's just the fucking world. There was women beforehand, you just didn't play as them. And nowadays, because, you know, we want it to be a bit more fair and equal on the old playing field, we advocate having girls as a leading role rather than being reserved to men doing everything and women being in the kitchen. Like, it's just these... You can't sell it as a feature when it's something that should just simply exist as by itself. You know, and I always find that funny when I see people that defend things like that. And they do. You know, there's a lot of crazy people out there. God bless them, but fuck them at the same time. Right here, I'm wanting Trico to go up to that little... You see the shelf just above here? I think he might be able to lean up to this, you know. I think I've seen him do that before. But he seems to be a little conflicted. So I'm going to give him some instructions as we stare at his wonderful violet ears. And you can see, like, his ears move when he receives what you want, which I think is really, really cool. Is he going to jump up? Yeah, there he goes. Just needed a little bit of motivation, you know. He's a lazy fucking bird, rat, cat thing. But we're going to talk about some other things, because this is a long video. It's the only problem with these videos, because there's no way to cut up the levels chapter by chapter per se. I just went with, you know, a decent chunk of gameplay to the next decent chunk of gameplay, and it intended to be not necessarily the parts where the game blacks out and it moves to the next logical area, because if I were to do that, then these videos would be hours long, and I didn't really fancy talking through an hour-long video, because it's not the easiest thing to do, and not everybody has an hour to spend, so cutting it down to 30-odd minutes, which is still a long time in the grand scheme of busy lives, you know, it's still an investment, but it's not as big of an investment as an hour is. And it's interesting because YouTube is favouring longer videos now, so if you were to do the bigger formats, you'd probably do a little bit better. But there's a lot of people that don't realise that YouTube's moved this way, so everybody looks at YouTube in the way we looked at it before, where smaller, more concise videos were rewarded. Like, look at C-Nanners, if you ever saw that guy's channel. He was a COD commentator that moved on to doing his own thing, and he would make these 6-minute montages of him playing, like, Garry's Mod and all these other PC games, and all they were a montage of him laughing with his friends, and they were incredibly popular. And it makes me wonder if now that this shift has happened, if it's affected C-Nanners at all, because that is a dude who can read the Matrix. He just figured YouTube out from a very early age, and just had a lot of success, and good on him, you know, because he put the time in, he put the work in. But everything is changing with that, where that's regarded, you know. It's interesting to see too, as things do adapt. Longer format becoming more of a thing rather than the short format. Like, how many short videos did you used to see? Those little, you know, people call them clickbaity when videos are short, but sometimes I think a video has more punch when it's short, and it can be more appealing. I think when somebody sees like a 4-minute video as opposed to a 50-minute video, you look at it like, oh, I'll just quickly do another, and I think that breeds more of a mentality of watching more, personally. But that's what YouTube wants to be moving away from, which is ironic, considering half the people lining their pockets are the ones who made that paradigm of YouTube, which I find interesting. But I did not want to get into another YouTube discussion. Not a lot of people like it, some people do. You're either on the fence or you're not. I want to talk about God Hand, another divisive topic here. It's something that's been on the channel for a while now. It's a game that I am incredibly fond of, and it's an incredibly difficult game too. God Hand is the kind of game that will shit in your face and then ask to see your mother. Like, this thing doesn't care. It's such a mean game, and I love it for its meanness, because it's a video game. It's exactly what it needs to be. It runs perfectly, frame rate wise. Everything about it is 100% player control. It's almost the opposite of this game that you're watching right now, but completely different types of games too. And recently I've been doing a fun run of the game where I'm trying to go through hard mode, not taking any damage, and trying to show you some of the moves, trying to show some fancy combos, some fancy compositions of action sequences, and essentially trying to do things that you should never do in God Hand in a lot of ways. Because this is a game that just brutally murders you all the time with the subtlety and grace of a gang rape. Everything in it's trying to kill you all the time, mercilessly at your throat, foot to neck, like really, really fiercely. And I'm trying to go in there and do silly stuff and use these moves that are incredibly unoptimized, and it can be challenging, but it's also really fun. Because all of these moves have got beautiful animations. Some of them are really specific and useful in certain areas, other ones are fucking useless, and I hate myself for using them, but I'm trying to. And then I got to Azel, who is the other God Hand. He's the demon, the devil hand, do they call him? He's the person who also has the same abilities as your character. And he's the Virgil. You know, he's the rival. He's the person who is just as capable as you, just as dangerous as you, and it results in these fantastic fights against such a capable enemy. Like, Azel is probably one of the most dangerous rivals I've ever faced in any game. He's up there with the best of them. Incredibly difficult. But the more I play him, the more I realise that I don't think he's designed very well. And this might shock some people, because Azel gets a lot of love for his design. And I will 100% concede that he's a challenging fight. The fight is incredibly intense, and a lot of the times the fight can be really, really fun. Oh, by the way, this is Trico not doing what I need him to do. He's kind of trying to figure it out, and he's having a tough time. So if you're wondering what we're having issue with, is we're waiting on him. Once again, it's another one of those moments where Trico has to do what he has to do, and sometimes he doesn't like doing it as we fall off him. That's me letting go and the physics taking over. I always like doing that, it's really fun. And now we get to do the water puzzles, right? It took him 20 minutes to dive under the second room, so I hope you don't get my luck or you're fucked. So Azel is tough, he can be fun, He looks cool. Everything about the setup for the fight I think is really, really great. But you know, when you analyse him fundamentally, I think he falls down a lot, and he falls down a lot because of laziness. And this might sound harsh, because I'm talking about the master Shinji Mikami here, and a lot of people that went on to be in Platinum Studios, and went on to be really, really great developers and make really, really great games, and had made great games prior to God Hand. And you might be thinking, Chris, lazy? What the fuck? This is a game that you worship, it's got all these fantastic mechanics, how can you call it lazy? Well, it's Azel's auto-counter bullshit that I think is lazy. And I tweeted earlier today about referencing him to a fighting game, and this is true, right, guys? Because I've spent 4.5 hours fighting him over yesterday and today. And I've fought this guy a lot in the past, but I've not touched God Hand for about 6 months because I had a ton of new releases, and I just kind of dropped off. It's not because I didn't want to play it, it's because I was busy. And you don't lose your skill in God Hand because a lot of it is so deeply conditioned due to how visceral and brutal it is, but you're going to lose some of your reactions. So I'm not as quick as I was when I started the project. I'm not as quick to dodge the stuff and as quick to evade, but it came back over the period of those 4 hours, and I got my no damage and I beat him. So it's not a case of, oh, Chris can't do it because he's bad or anything, and he's calling it lazy because he can't do it. It's nothing to do with that. Some people will always say it is because those are those kind of people. But this boss has fundamental issues that I take great offence to, and I don't like it at all. I really don't. To me, it's cheesy. It's cheating, I would call it. And it's cheating because when you have two people that are very capable, I think the playing field should be equal. And I think the fight should be 100% fair. I think the rules that apply to you should apply to them. And I appreciate that that's probably why I'm not a game developer, and maybe not a good game developer if I was, because if you get what you want sometimes in games, it's not really what you want. And a lot of people ask for things with video games, but it's not necessarily what they do truly want in the game, and it's a good job the devs didn't listen, or you would have got something you didn't like. And I'm well aware of that. But as it stands, Azel does a few things that I fucking hate. And I hate them because they don't feel fair. God Hand has a very specific camera perspective. You're behind Jean's back, he's off-centered on the first of the rule of thirds on the screen, and every so often there are moments where you can't see where Azel is because Jean's there. And I'm not going to attack the camera in God Hand because I think for its time, it's one of the most innovative, revolutionary cameras ever. I think it's one of the best cameras ever, with reason. It has problems, and those problems exist in a lot of other camera methods, but in this one, this is a dangerous problem to have, because if you can't see Azel because of Jean, you have to do a certain amount of things. You can use the reel to kind of reset time, slow down, see what Azel's doing, and then recover that way, or you can turn Jean to tilt the camera a little bit, but you're kind of mobile when you do that, or static, sorry, so you're not going to be in a position to do too much. And it's not a big thing until Azel does a flying kick at you, or until Azel does one of his roulette moves, which, in the game's defense, you can hear all of the actions and you can react accordingly, because the sound design is immaculate in God Hand for telling you what attacks are coming. But it still can get in the way, and Azel is so capable, and it leads to these interesting moments where you commit to things and things get you in trouble. And one of them is getting frame trapped by the computer. And you might not know what a frame trap is because you might not be a fighting game player. A frame trap is essentially giving your opponent the impression that they can attack and they can press a button, but they can't, because you've intentionally left a gap so that you will beat whatever they do. That's the kind of the quick way of explaining it. There's way more complexity to it, and it varies between game systems. But in God Hand, you wouldn't think there would be frame traps, would you? But there are. You know, it might not be as technical because you're against the computer, but there are ways you can predict what an AI is going to do. You can provoke it, and then you can beat it. I do it in a lot of instances. I'll have explained it already in those videos if you're interested. Go and watch them. It's a fun series. But essentially, there are these moments where the AI can pretend that they're stunned. And when you're in a stun animation, the only way to get out of a stun animation in God Hand is to like mash the buttons. But I mean a flinch. I don't mean full stun. I mean hit stun brought on by an attack. So when you're in hit stun, you can either take the full animation, which is not a good idea, but you will do it because you have to condition yourself to react to it. Or you can cancel it with an animation cancel using the up dodge or the side dodge. So the moment you get that flinch, you can cancel out of it and recover immediately, and it will half the time it takes you to be back in control. One of the wonderful aspects of God Hand is how it keeps you in control at almost all times. It's really good for that. But the AI can do it as well. But the AI doesn't dodge cancel. They just go into moves and instantly cancel out of the animation, and it leads to these incredibly unfair bullshit moments that I don't like at all. Never liked them, never will. You can see it with the women a lot. When you hit a woman in God Hand, I know that sounds horrible, but you know, men and women, we hit them both. They will do this flinch where they'll stagger sideways and look like they're hurt, and it conveys to the player that you have an opportunity now to hit them and get an advantage. But if you run forward, she will boomer cancel, not quite the boomer turn, into an attack that hits you. Oh, by the way, we're waiting for Trico now to climb up and jump into the water. All you want to do here is hold towards the area so that you get into the side when he splashes you. This is a cool puzzle, I like this one. And she'll instantly recover and kick you in the face, or do whatever the woman wants to do, and it's very dangerous when they do that. A lot of enemies can do this. Azel can do this. The problem when Azel does it is he has a jab that's faster than almost anything in the game. Like, it's almost as fast as that kick that Shannon does, the woman on the bridge does. You know, the cunty woman, the zebra woman, who's in like pink and grey lycra or whatever? She has this super fast kick that I really don't like because it's too quick. It's like 4 frames or something. And every time I try to beat Azel's jab with my jab, we either trade or he beats me. And he beats me because he does it before I'm going there. He leads it because he's a computer and he can do these things. He's got great timing, great spacing. I'm a human and my reflexes aren't as good as they used to be because I'm getting older. So even when I'm on the ball and I'm super quick and I'm responding and I'm leading that jab in there, he can beat my jab because his jab, it feels like at times, is faster than Gene's. And I've got no problem with this dude having a jab that's faster than Gene, as long as he doesn't go to it almost every situation, and this dude can. So it leads to these moments where if you get guard broke by him, when you punch his guard with not a guard breaker, he will do an animation that stuns you. And it stuns you long enough that if he does the jab, you can't avoid it. The only ways to avoid it, it seems, are to get almost frame perfect up dodge cancels of your stunned animation, or to be spaced just out of its range. And there are times when I've dodged it, and there are times when I've not dodged it, but the fact remains, I know when it's going to happen, I know that it's coming, and I hit that up dodge as fast as I can, and I still don't get it. So there's these moments where it feels like it's a trap, it's literally a trap that you can't dodge. And it's annoying because he can pull it out at any time, and because his suite of moves is so vast, he can do all kinds of wonderful things. All kinds of different stuff, but if he goes to that jab, you take a hit. And because I'm doing no damage, that's a reset. So that's really frustrating. And there are moments where he'll be recovering, getting up off the ground, and I sprint towards him, throw my jab out, and he'll frame trap me with his jab. So as he's getting up, he'll just boom, hit me. And I've got dozens of pieces of evidence of this happening, of him just throwing this move out and catching me with it, and no matter what I do, it catches it. Like, I'll space him with a sidekick, his jab catches it and trades with it, because the AI is so good, it's too good. It's infallible in a lot of ways. And don't get me wrong, you can completely, not necessarily bait it, but you can not put yourself in a situation where it can be a problem. And it leads to being a little bit more defensive. And I don't like being defensive against Azel, I like being aggressive. But when you're aggressive, you've got to be on point, because if he throws that jab out and you're anywhere close to it, it's almost unchallengeable. It's really fast, and it's bullshit, I think, in a lot of ways. The second thing I really don't like about him is whenever you get good pressure against him, he will pull out a roulette move, and I don't know the name of it. It's like the Sambo one. It's the one where he flails both his arms in like a helicopter fashion, and then he does the fist that's a mid. You can up dodge the first few hits, I think, but the ending hit is a mid, so you have to sidestep it or iframe through it or backflip it. That move, I hate it. And I hate it because he can cancel into it from recovery animations or from getting hit. And the beginning of it is very quick, and if you're on the left-hand side of him, it hits you almost immediately. And I got a fail video on my channel that I put up the other day of this exact thing happening. I'm doing okay, I'm doing fine, I go to do a roulette move, I want to get something like a dragon kit, but I press it really quickly in hopes of having a super cool finish, and it gives me something I don't want, it gives me something that's useless, and I waste my roulettes. I'm very sad. And then as I'm trying to get away, I do a side dash when I'm close to him, expecting him to do a counter sweep, and he starts that move, and it hits me, because I can't get the back flip out in time. And it's just, the way I fight against Azel, I use a lot of backflips, and the backflip has the most recovery on it. I don't use the up dodges because a lot of the stuff he does is programmed responses to what you do. That's the third thing I don't like about Azel. But the thing with that move is, he pulls it out at the time where you know you were going to get an advantage, and he does it because it gives him armor, and you can't interrupt it. And I don't think Azel should have anything that you can't interrupt until he goes into God Hand. That's the point of the God Hand. And the fact that he can pull that move out at whim and spam it 5 times in a row if he wants to, means that you can go in for a punish, and you don't even finish your punish before he's doing it again. And it leads to these moments where he's a dickhead, and the fight feels like it's 100% up to him. Is he going to give you a good pattern and be fun, or is he going to be a wanker, never block, and do all the bullshit? And that to me breeds just furious anger, because it takes you out of the fight. It makes it more about him and less about your reaction to it, and it can 100% be beaten, and it can be 100% reacted to. There are just certain instances where it feels like cheating, and I don't have a problem with the fact that he has the moves. I would adjust them if I was the designer, just ever so slightly, but it's how he chooses to apply them. And this is where I would call the AI lazy and kind of bullshit, because he only ever does them in moments where it's the only thing he can do to beat what you do. And the whole counter aspect of God Hand is to do these wonderful moves and time them in such a way that you beat what people do. And Azel has a wonderful amount of fantastic looking moves, because he can use a lot of the moves that Gene can. So he has all these fancy kicks, all these crazy combos, all this wonderful potential, but he'll never do those in those clutch moments because they won't win. You'll beat them, and he doesn't want you to beat them, so he pulls out the bullshit jab, or he does the armoured roulette move just to fuck you over. And I think it takes away from a lot of his charm of what he could be if he wasn't so, you know, quick and flagrant when it comes to those stupid moves. And there are a lot of techniques to beat Azel that work, but they rely on essentially exploiting how his AI works. So there are 2 moves that hit low and have slightly long animations. I don't remember the full names of them. I think one of them is the heel drop and the other one is the stomping fist. These 2 moves are used to prop people up. So if you knock somebody down and you attack them with these moves, it will bounce them to around Gene's chest level, his eye level. From there you can do certain moves to knock them higher for a juggle state, but these moves are designed to essentially off the ground people, OTG people if you're a fighting game fan. As we bump into the second Guardian and things start to get real exciting now, because this is a very cool sequence. But for some reason, Azel has problems blocking these moves. He just gets hit by them, and it will provoke him to... not blocking, sorry. He can't dodge them, is what I meant to say. So, 2 things will happen if you use those moves against him. He'll get hit, and you'll get a little bit of damage, or he'll block. And you can use these moves to exploit his block, to break his guard and bully him. And it's a very effective way of beating him, and it makes the final fight against Azel way more manageable because you can control a lot of his randomness, and he is a very random boss. You get a bad pattern, it's a nightmare. You just can't hit him, but those moves will. Another move that he struggles to dodge is the low kick. I think the low kick has some kind of property too that he can't seem to do anything about it. And I find it really interesting because the elites can jump over certain sweeps and certain moves like that. I don't know if they can jump over the low kick. The low kick might just be a unique move, but Azel has nothing to deal with that or those 2 moves I mentioned, so you can use them to guarantee him to a certain situation, and you can do that move into guard break and up cancel and pretty much get a guard break maybe 1 in 3 times and really control him, and it makes the second fight much easier than the first one in my opinion, even though he uses the God Hand and it's a much longer fight. But at the point when you get there, you've got a lot of moves. You've got nearly all the moves in the game that aren't the ones that you get at the end of the game. And that was the thing that I was getting most frustrated about when I was fighting Azel, minus the 2 moves that he kept doing to essentially cheat me out of getting my victory and make me take a little bit of damage. Because when you're not going for no damage, you take a hit off Azel, it's no big deal, because you can recover. And it might not even do that much damage, and with my life I can probably take 2 to 3 hits, maybe 4, depending on what they are. So I'm not afraid of him, because I know that one mistake might be the only mistake I make in the video. But that's not the point of this series, and that's why it makes this series so much more taxing. The strategy here, guys, is you want to run into the other room. I tested something here and it didn't work. I was testing to see if I ran towards the opening of the crawl space, if it would make the AI of the Guardian move across to the other room. It didn't. Because you'll notice, I didn't commit to the jump, I jumped to the side of it, and he was still there to stop me. But this is where I realised that the animation cancelling in The Last Guardian is something that can definitely be applied, but it doesn't look very good because you're still kind of in a weird animation, and it happened here. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to jump towards the platform where the Guardian puts its head in, and because I've baited it away, it won't be there. But you're going to see the boy stagger, and I'm going to mash triangle, and you're going to see me cancel out of the stagger into a second jump, like that. And it's not complete cancelling because you still saw a lot of that animation, but you can jump during a lot of the animations way before the game will visually let you know that that's a thing. So you want to experiment with that to get some good results. Because it does exist, it's just, as I've mentioned, it's a little bit goofy looking as I fall into this next zone and we move on. But good old Azel, he's such an interesting fight, but the issue that I was having was I didn't have any of the moves that I wanted to do to him. Because when you start a new game, the way that they drip feed the moves to you in God Hand, I think is a little bit slow. I think it's a little bit too slow, and I can understand why they do it, because some moves are kind of broken, and some moves are actually fucking broken. But they give you some of the most powerful moves at the beginning of the game anyway. Like, you can get some of those ridiculous evade high moves that you can just spam and nothing can touch you, that a lot of people like to do. So it can't have been for an eye for balance, it must have just been they thought that, you know, they should have saved them for later. Because I wanted to do the drunk fall. I wanted to bait Azel into doing certain moves so I could see if I could drunk fall them and counter them without taking damage. I wanted to do the 2 slap combo that's a launcher and a juggle that he does to you. You know, there was a lot of moves that I wanted to do to him. But I just didn't have them, so in the end I ended up going really standard and not using anything too interesting. Because I just didn't have it. And of course, if I'd have had the Stomping Fist and the Heal Drop, whatever it's called, I would have done those, because those moves enable you to do a lot of fun stuff with him, and you can really put the hurt on him. But in this moment, we're currently being battered around, like we're a professional Zorba being attacked by some mythical creature. And the physics here are really the star of the show, because you get to see some really funny moments of it knocking you to places that you didn't really want to be. And you'll notice I'm not even going to mess here, I'm not even moving, I'm not contributing, because I believe this is a sequence that has nothing to do with the player. You're just waiting for a timer to go, so that the command of the tower will make the Guardian move away. And there he goes. And then this is another section that's kind of weird, where the game leaves you to kind of postulate as how you're going to break this binding. And you can move around and pretend to figure things out, but you're really on a timer again, and you're just waiting for Trico to turn up. And I don't know if shouting him has more of an effect to make him come quicker, but from my testing that I've done, it didn't seem to make a damn difference. So it's just, once again, it's a section where the game gives you the illusion that you have to do something, but you don't. So I've removed it. So thank you for watching, guys, and you take care now.